There are moments when a woman knows that every eye in the room is waiting for her next move. Vixen stood still, time frozen around her. Tade's hand outstretched, a diamond holding dynasties. Julius's voice echoing from the doorway like a velvet thunder. Julius. She doesn't belong to anyone. And her? She turned. No words, no nods. Just the click of heels on marble. She walked out. Like a goddess choosing exile over a gilded cage. This is the story of Vixen, Part 4. The Choice That Burns. Inside the car was just a quiet hum. Zanzuri's skyline glows in fragments behind tinted glass. Vixen sat motionless. The velvet interior of the rolls cocooned her in silence. But inside her chest, chaos churned. One hand clutched her thigh, firm and still, her signature self-restraint. The other? Loosely holding her phone. She stared at the dark screen. Not a single notification yet. But she knew what was coming. Then she unlocked it, searched, and tapped Leonard. The phone rang. He answered before the second ring. But for a moment, neither of them spoke. Just the soft crackle of distance. Then his voice broke the silence. Leonard said in a low, thoughtful tone, "I heard." A pause. Didn't need to watch the clips, but my assistant showed me anyway. You walked out, bold as fire. Left them both standing. His tone wasn't mocking, just layered, a mix of intrigue and quiet concern. Vixen responded dryly. News travels faster than conscience these days. She closed her eyes, head resting against the window. Leonard's voice softened. I figured you'd call eventually. Not to talk, not to explain. Then he said quietly, almost more to himself than her, "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know I am here for you." That hit deeper than she wanted to admit. No judgment, no grand declarations, just presence. Still, she kept her tone even. "I need space," Vixen said, the words almost falling from her lips. Away from all of it. Not questions, not headlines. Away from men writing poems about who they think I am. Leonard answered without hesitation. "The yacht's in Zanzuri. I'll have the crew prep it tonight. Full discretion. No press, no guests, just sea and silence. You can stay as long as you need, or as long as you want to disappear." Vixen exhaled through her nose, almost a sigh, holding back from falling apart. "Thank you," she whispered. Leonard, quieter now, almost broken in his own way, said, "You're welcome, V. Even if you never come back." She ended the call, slowly, and for a few precious seconds. She didn't feel like a symbol. She felt human, tired, and on the brink of falling apart. The Zanzuri coast at dawn. The sky stretched pale pink, the water shimmering like glass. Leonard's yacht rose like a sleeping queen in the harbour. Sleek, ivory-hulled, quiet as breath. Just what Vixen needed. Private dock, unlisted coordinates, unreachable to anyone. Vixen lay draped across a lounger wrapped in soft linen on the lower deck, her curls loose, free, her skin golden in the sunrise, No camera, no makeup, just her natural self. She hadn't spoken much since her arrival. The stewardesses were polite and discreet. The chef left plates she barely touched. She slept with the windows open, letting the sea wind keep her grounded. The world paused. For once, she let herself dissolve. Her phone buzzed again. She checked. Tade. Her mother. Leonard again. Once. No name. Julius? Or just unknown numbers. She ignored them all. Just slid the phone face down on the table. Mid-morning. Day 3 on the yacht. Vixen sat at the edge of the deck, wrapped in a caftan robe, holding a cup of ginger tea. The ocean was calm. But her soul? Not yet. Her phone lit up again. MOM. Calling flashed across the display. She picked up this time. 3 days. That's how long you've gone invisible. Imelda's voice came over the phone, measured, theatrical as always, unable to hide her disappointment. Vixen responded with a matching flatness. Aren't you proud? I didn't even cause a scene. Vivian. You embarrassed a legacy family. You insulted an Owusu in public. That's not scandal. That's declaration. Vixen chuckled bitterly, rolling her eyes. Oh, I see. So the Empire's honor is bruised. How tragic, she retorted sarcastically. A silence stretched long enough to hurt. Then Imelda's voice cut through, precise as a knife. You think you're above consequence, Vivian Vajera? Vixen snapped, the crack finally breaking through her control. No, Mom! I think I'm in consequence. Right now. Alone. Hunted by headlines. And guess what? No one asked how I feel about any of it. A soft, sharp voice from the other end. Feelings don't protect power, Vivian. You of all people should know that by now. Vixen's voice hardened. And power doesn't protect people, Mum. It isolates them. You of all people should know that too. Imelda let out a deep breath, a sound that wasn't relief, but resignation. That's the cost of legacy, she said. Another silence. The words sat heavy between them. 2 generations. 2 different kinds of women, bound by blood, divided by belief. Vixen closed her eyes for a moment, forcing back the ache rising in her throat. Her voice trembled, but didn't break. Did you ever care if I was happy, Mum? Or was it always about power? A silence thick with the weight of unspoken things. Then Imelda answered. Not cruel, not warm, just Imelda. I cared that you survived, and you did. You flourished. I gave you the tools. Now it's up to you to choose how to use them. Click. Vixen ended the call. The tea spilled slightly onto her robe, but she didn't flinch. She just sat there, staring at the vast, indifferent sea. Her mind spun. Her heart ached. Moments like this. She didn't need a mentor or a queenmaker. She needed a mother. Someone who would hold the little girl that had spent her whole life learning to wear crowns too heavy for her head. But there was no shelter here. Only the cold inheritance of survival. And the loneliness of a woman trained to never be anything less than perfect. By sunset of day 3, on the yacht. The sun had begun its descent behind the golden cliffs of Zanzuri's coast, casting a tangerine hue across the sky. The yacht swayed gently at anchor. The water shimmered like melted copper. Inside the main cabin, Vixen sat curled on the divan in a loose, olive-green hand-dyed caftan, barefoot, her hair wrapped in a silk headscarf. A leather-bound notebook sat on the table in front of her, blank pages untouched. She hadn't written a word in 3 days. She tried, but nothing came, not even anger. Then she heard footsteps. Not from the crew, she sensed. Measured, healed, intentional. Vixen's eyes flicked to the glass door before she even heard the knock. A shadow passed. Then the door slid open. Nia. Draped in deep indigo, a high-slit Ankara print gown clinging to her form like second skin. Not flashy, just commanding. Gold cuffs on both wrists, braids pulled back into a single sharp bun. She didn't look like she'd stumbled across the yacht. She looked like she owned the ocean. Vixen blinked, composed. "I didn't realize I was accepting guests," she said coolly. Nia smiled faintly, unapologetic. "You weren't, but I'm not the type who waits for invitations." She stepped inside without asking. The crew said nothing. They had been told to obey. Vixen rose slowly, studying her. "So, you found me?" Nia shrugged casually. "Finding people is part of the work, especially when they're at the center of too many moving pieces." Vixen folded her arms across her chest. "I take it Julius doesn't know you're here." Nia smirked. "He doesn't know a lot of things. These days, neither do you." Outside, the wind pressed against the yacht's sails. Inside, the silence thickened like smoke. Vixen's voice was sharp, slicing through it. "If you came here to posture, you can turn around and dive back into your security convoy." Nia's smile deepened. "Please. If I wanted to intimidate you, I wouldn't have worn heels." A flicker of amusement crossed Vixen's face. "Barely." She gestured to the low seating area. "You came all this way. Say what you came to say." They sat. The silence that lingered was charged, but oddly civil. Nia turned her gaze to the ocean, voice soft but precise. "I came to warn you. Quietly, before the noise catches up." Vixen kept her eyes steady. "Warn me about what?" Nia's head tilted slightly. "Julius." A flicker crossed Vixen's face, but she masked it quickly. Her voice was measured. "Let me guess. He's not who he says he is." Nia's lips curled, half smirk, half truth. "Is anyone in your world?" Nia leaned forward, folding her hands neatly. "You think you're being seen by a man who understands you. Maybe you are. But what if you're also being pulled into something deeper? Something you didn't consent to?" Vixen studied her carefully. There was no jealousy in Nia's voice, no bitterness, only caution, calculated and clean. Vixen said coolly, "You're not here because you want him back." Nia's answer was flat, without hesitation. "I'm here because I've already survived the kind of storm you don't see coming until it's too late." Nia paused, carefully choosing her next words. Her voice sharpened just slightly. "His world has always been, and will always be, complicated. His public action at the proposal party created a power shift no one can ignore." She leaned back slightly, her eyes gleaming with warning. You are no longer just a woman in their society, Vixen. You're a lever, a symbol they can twist, a weapon they can use. The sun dipped fully behind the horizon, casting the room in a soft blue glow. Nia rose gracefully as she turned toward the door. "How did you find me?" Vixen asked. Pausing with her hand on the glass, she glanced back over her shoulder, a knowing smile curling her lips. "Because I move in spaces most women are simply written about, and I make it my business to know what happens in my territory." Then, almost as an afterthought, in a tone too casual to be innocent, the safety of the Owusu name would have been something to consider. But then again, how safe can anything truly be when you disrupt the order? She didn't wait for a reply, didn't expect one. She slid open the door, paused once more, dropping one final stone into the still waters. "How long do you plan on hiding, Vivian, after shaking the foundations they spent centuries building?" "Leave the yacht, Vivian. Go home. Check what he left behind, not what he told you, but what he didn't." Then she left. Nia disappeared into the dusk, leaving only the soft thrum of the ocean against the hull and the widening echo of everything Vixen could no longer ignore. Vixen sat silently, heavy with unspoken thoughts. The city stretched out below her like a velvet quilt stitched with light and shadows. But Vixen's mind wasn't on the city. She barely even saw it. Her thoughts churned darker than the ocean beyond the lights. She stood alone at the heart of her penthouse. Stillness wrapped around her, not soothing, but suffocating. Lights dim, music dead, staff long dismissed. No noise, no distractions, only the heavy, undeniable press of knowing that something was unfolding around her, something too large to see, too quiet to fight. Her chest tightened. She wasn't sure when the anger had started to mix with something colder. Not fear exactly. Something worse. Betrayal. Not just by lovers or family, but by a world she once thought she understood. The luxury, the legacy, the polished rules of the powerful. Maybe it had always been an illusion. Maybe she had just been well-dressed enough to miss the cracks. A glass of water sat untouched on the low marble table. She didn't reach for it. Hydration wouldn't fix the hollow gnawing at her gut. She didn't need water. She needed answers. Truth, if such a thing even existed anymore. Vixen's hand trembled once before she clenched it into a fist at her side. Control. Even now. She fought to hold it, but inside her chest, the foundation was already breaking, cracking beneath the polished surface. Her gaze drifted across the room. It wasn't the skyline she sought. It wasn't the quiet wealth. It was that. The things she'd ignored for too long. The canvas Julius left her, still wrapped, still waiting, still demanding to be seen. She moved toward it slowly. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the ground itself was mourning what she would find. What had he left her? A confession? A warning? A betrayal wrapped in brushstrokes? Her fingertips brushed the edge of the thick cloth, and for the first time in a long time, Vixen hesitated. Not because she doubted her strength, but because some buried part of her already knew. After this, nothing would ever feel clean again. Like a woman walking toward a mirror she wasn't sure she wanted to look into. Her fingers hesitated, then pulled the cloth free. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't flattering. It was raw. A portrait of her. Not in pearls or silks, not with polite smiles, but with storm in her eyes, fire in her stance. And behind her, an unfinished city burning and rebuilding all at once. Her stomach twisted. At the bottom left, what looked like a signature, but not Julius's name. She frowned, knelt, leaned closer. It was a symbol. A circle made of interlocking flames, etched deep in crimson. And a single word, written below in delicate gold ink. Nquanta. She whispered it aloud. What is that? She grabbed her phone, searched. Nothing. Switched to incognito. Private forums. Still, nothing mainstream. Until a forgotten article surfaced. Title: The Disappeared Artists of the Resistance, Codes of the Black Fire Circle. Her screen lit up. Names, symbols, stories scrubbed from history. One name stood out. Nquanta. A ghost. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Quanta. Why did it sound familiar? Like a whisper she'd heard once, long ago, when she was still young enough to listen in on conversations meant for men having private meetings with her political stepfathers, in rooms where her mother's name floated like a crown, and behind closed doors, kingdoms were built and destroyed over cigars and gold tumblers of brandy. A name linked to resistance. Sabotaged murals. Rumors of a coded revolution buried by governments desperate to pretend it never existed. Ghost stories for people who thought democracy was a handshake instead of a battlefield. Is this the same circle of flames? The same rebellion? The word pulsed in her mind. Cold, ugly, unwanted. No. That wasn't Julius. That wasn't who he was. She chose him because he wasn't part of all that. Because he was wild and untamed. Because he painted, not plotted. Because he kissed her like politics had never existed. Because he was supposed to be free. Vixen pressed her fingers to her temple, trying to steady herself. Her mind raced. Had she ever truly asked him who he was? Or had she just been so eager to believe he wasn't part of the world she hated, that she had closed her eyes to the truth? The room suddenly felt too big. The wealth, the marble, the shimmering skyline. It all felt overwhelming, temporary, as if the foundations of her life had been made of sand all along. She staggered backward without realizing it, one hand clutching the edge of the marble table to steady herself. Her vision blurred. Her chest tightened until she couldn't breathe. Her skin flushed hot, then cold, and with a strength forged from too many years of learning how to fall without making a sound. Vixen turned, stumbled toward the bathroom, and splashed icy water onto her face like she could wash away the betrayal clinging to her skin. When she felt grounded again, she looked into the mirror. Her voice cracked, not from rage, not from strength, from something deeper, from something breaking. You weren't hiding from me, Julius, she whispered. You were hiding me. She clutched the counter with trembling hands, not from weakness, but from the cold slap of realization. She grabbed her phone again, scrolled. Julius, Julius, again, then unknown numbers, message after message, until she opened the latest one. A voice note, crackling with static, from Julius. V, I need to see you. I can't say where. Just know, what I told you in the gallery wasn't a line. I've been painting a revolution. The note ended in broken static. Her heart thundered in her chest. Then, a buzz at her door. She jumped, and for the first time realized she was alone. She walked to the monitor screen. Then words appeared, typed in real time. It wasn't the painting. It was the symbol behind it. You've been seen. You need to move. Now. Her Rolls-Royce pulled silently into the private courtyard. The heavy iron gates closed behind her with a soft, final thud. She sat there for a moment longer, fingers resting lightly on her lap. The estate hadn't changed, but she had changed. The last time she crossed this threshold, she had left behind more than a diamond and a dynasty. She had walked out on a kingdom, on a future that would have been paved in gold, but chained by invisible cuffs. For a brief, piercing moment, something twisted in her chest. Guilt, regret, or just the ghost of a life she had refused. She pushed the thought aside, or tried to. The invitation had come through a direct call from Tade. His voice had been brief, controlled, but beneath the formality, there was something raw he couldn't quite hide, a crack beneath the polished surface. And so she went. Not because she bowed, not because she sought forgiveness, but because she needed to know. But because there were some things even she wasn't ready to leave unfinished. Now, here she was, rolling into the courtyard like a queen returning to a throne she had burned herself, uncertain, but unbroken. The car eased to a halt. The engine fell into silence. Only the ocean wind and the soft crackle of torches filled the courtyard now. For a moment, she didn't move, just sat there. Her hand hovered briefly over the door handle. There was no fear in her, only weight. The weight of knowing that every step she took now, every glance, every word, was stitched to a history they hadn't finished writing. A history they hadn't decided yet whether to end in triumph or ruin. Finally, she pushed the door open. The heavy scent of salt and earth rushed in, brushing against her skin. Her heels clicked softly against the stone as she stepped out. Each step deliberate, measured. A queen without a crown, but not without power. Across the courtyard, standing just inside the pool of golden torchlight, Tade watched her approach. He was wearing a perfectly tailored traditional attire, a deep bronze agbada trimmed with subtle embroidery, regal without shouting. One hand held a sleek black phone to his ear. His voice, low and controlled, carried briefly across the courtyard. But the moment he saw her, he ended the call without ceremony, slipped the phone into the inner fold of his robe, and turned fully toward her. The air between them tightened, rich with everything they hadn't said since the night she walked away from his hand, and the throne he had tried to place upon it. For a breath, neither spoke. The torches flickered in the growing dusk. The ocean winds whispered through the colonnades. But between them, only silence. Heavy, dangerous, sacred. But his eyes, they betrayed him. Not rage, not hate. Something quieter. Disappointment. Hurt. Hope. A hope he hadn't yet found the strength to kill. You came, Tade said, voice low but loaded. Vixen's heart shifted uncomfortably in her chest. She didn't let it show. Her chin stayed high. Her walk remained steady. But inside she felt the faint ache of memory pressing against her ribs, the image of his hand holding a ring, the weight of the room, the eyes, the expectations, the echo of her refusal slicing the air, and the way she had walked away. She met his gaze now without flinching. "I always finish what I start," she said evenly. The words sounded strong, sharp, but she heard the slight tremor beneath them, and judging by the flicker in Tade's eyes, so did he. Tade's brow lifted, a subtle crack in his composure. For a moment, they simply stood there. Two figures surrounded by torches and unfinished history. The sea wind brushed through the open courtyard, stirring the scent of salt and old stone. Neither moved to close the distance between them. Neither dared. He gestured towards the sitting lounge arranged neatly under the open sky, set right in the center of the courtyard. Elegant low sofas, thick white cushions, surrounded by flickering lanterns, the great baobab rising silently behind it. A quiet witness. An invitation to talk, but not to resolve. Not yet. She didn't move to sit. Neither did he. Because they both knew some wounds didn't deserve the dignity of comfort, not until truths were faced, and neither was ready for that. Not tonight. The tension between them was palpable. A tight, invisible thread stretched taut. Too tight to be called forgiveness. Too alive to be called indifference. It was the space where love used to live, and where something far more dangerous had begun to grow. Vixen lifted her chin slightly, breaking the stillness. "Let's not waste the poetry tonight," Vixen said coolly. "Why did you call me here?" Her voice was sharper than she intended. It wasn't anger. It was armor. Armor she had learned to wear too young and carry too long. Tade's lips pressed into a line. His hand twitched at his side. There was so much unsaid between them, thick enough to choke on, but he forced his voice even. "Because you're at the center of something you don't understand. And I needed to see if you still remembered who you are." Vixen's gaze sharpened. She could have laughed. Instead, she answered with a voice like silk-wrapped steel. "You mean who you thought I was?" Tade took a step closer, gravel crunching under his polished shoes. His voice sharpened. "And yet here you are, returning from your self-inflicted exile after a mysterious visit from his fiancée. Running around after messages, paintings, symbols you don't even understand." His voice rose without his permission. Emotion bled into every word. He was losing control, and for the first time, Vixen saw it. Tade wasn't just angry. He was scared. "Do you even realize how vulnerable you are, Vixen?" he almost shouted, fists clenching at his sides. The words hung in the humid night air like the last drop before a storm. For a moment, neither spoke. The words hung heavy between them, the humid night closing in. Tade's voice softened suddenly, breaking into almost a whisper. "You walk into fire." Vixen gazed at him steadily, and for the first time, truly saw him. Tade Owusu. Not the untouchable heir, not the calculated royal, but a man under pressure. She truly saw the man underneath the silk and steel, cornered, maybe not by her, maybe not even by Julius, maybe by something far bigger than either of them. This couldn't just be about a refused proposal. There was more, much more. Everything, and everyone, was not who they seemed. The memory of Nia's voice slid into her mind, chilling. Is anyone in your world who they say they are? Vixen's heart tightened. Her mind raced, but her face remained a mask of composure. Maybe, she said quietly, maybe I am walking into fire. She stepped forward, fearless, but at least it'll be my fire. She turned on her heel without waiting for permission or approval. Tade's voice followed her, low, cold, and heavy. Then don't come back asking for rain. She paused, just for a breath, didn't turn around, didn't answer. And then she walked on, head high, heart thundering, world shifting beneath her feet. Above them, thunder rumbled low across the Zanzuri night. A storm long overdue. The soft beep of the fingerprint scan sounded like a gunshot in the heavy silence. The door slid open and immediately froze. For a moment, the weight of the night still clung to her skin. The ghost of her meeting with Tade still breathing against her back. She could feel it in the stiffness of her neck, the ache blooming at the base of her spine. The words they hadn't said. The fire they hadn't extinguished. The storm they had only postponed. Guilt gnawed at her edges. Guilt for the choice she had made. Guilt for the man she might have wounded more than she realized. She dropped her keys soundlessly onto the black marble counter. Exhaled. Forced herself to push the night into a box she couldn't afford to open right now. She moved carefully across the marble floors, heels echoing in the hollow silence. But something else, something deeper, stopped her breath mid-motion. The apartment was wrong, too still. No music drifted from the hidden speakers. The hallway light, normally triggered by motion, stayed dark, too sharp. The kind of silence that wasn't empty. It was occupied. Every nerve in her body tightened. A chill brushed her skin. Not from the air conditioning, from something primal. The instincts that survival had carved into her bones long ago. Vixen's hand flexed at her side. She moved forward slowly, her heels muted against the polished floor. Every step a silent question. Is it already too late to run? She was no longer a woman returning to her sanctuary. She was a trespasser walking into a battlefield. And somewhere in the shadows, the past she had fought to outgrow was waiting for her. She turned toward the living room and froze. There, on the glass bar counter, deliberately placed as if it belonged there, lay a single white envelope. Her name was scrawled across the front, Vivian. The handwriting was elegant, a hand too steady to belong to a man in fear. Vixen's pulse quickened beneath her skin. There was no shattered lock, no forced door, no alarms tripped. Whoever had come as if they owned the place, and left the same way. She moved forward slowly, each step brushing against the marble like a whisper she couldn't silence. Her fingers brushed the envelope. It was heavier than it should have been, as if it carried something more than paper inside. Hesitating only for a breath, she tore it open. Inside, typed neatly across the center, were words so simple they almost mocked her. You were never meant to be a bystander. You were always part of the design. She read it twice, then a third time. There was no signature, no crest, no cryptic symbol she could trace back to a family, a house, or a dynasty. Only the message, blunt and cold. A whisper carved in ink, aimed directly at the core of who she was. It wasn't a threat, not exactly, and it wasn't a warning either. It was a claim, a declaration. Someone wasn't trying to frighten her. They were marking her. They were telling her she wasn't just a bystander to the games of power and legacy swirling around her. She was a piece on the board. A piece already moved into position without her consent. A pawn dressed in silk. Or maybe a queen they never expected to fight back. The realization coiled in her gut like a living thing. She stood there a moment longer, the card trembling between her fingers, before the violent buzzing of her phone shattered the thick silence. Vixen jumped from the ringing. Unknown caller. Her instincts screamed caution, but she answered. Julius's voice came through the line, low, sharp, and stripped of any softness. Don't speak. His words came fast, like a man racing time. They breached your place. They weren't there to hurt you. They weren't there to rob you. They were there to leave that. And then softer, darker. They want you scared. They want you in play. Vixen clutched the envelope tighter, the card inside, cutting against her palm. Julius's voice, ragged now, almost pleading. Whatever you read, question it. Not everything that feels like a message is truth. Some things are scripts they're trying to force you to follow. A long pause. Only the hollow buzz of the connection between them. Then, low and urgent, we need to meet. Alone, no security, no eyes. A sharp final instruction. Come as you. Come fast. The waterfront studio. The line cut out. Abrupt. Final. Vixen lowered the phone slowly, the weight of everything folding onto her shoulders. Behind her, her penthouse stood silent, stripped of its illusion of safety. Around her, the night thickened, stretching its fingers through every crack in her certainty. And ahead, only the unknown. A stage set for a game she no longer controlled. Zanzuri's moon was pale above the dark water. Streetlights flickered over cobblestone alleys once walked by merchants, now passed by silence. Vixen stepped out of the car herself. No chauffeur. The wind carried a trace of salt, oil, and something else. Memory. She entered the studio slowly. The place hadn't changed, but he had. Julius sat on his painting chair, smoking a cigarette, surrounded by unfinished canvases. She never saw him smoke. The smell of turpentine lingered in the air. Only a single oil lantern flickered. He turned when she stepped in. Their eyes met instantly. At a tension of chemistry pull here. I didn't think you'd actually come, he said quietly. Neither did I. Vixen answered, closing the door behind her. Then Vixen broke the silence. You've been silent for weeks. Then I get cryptic messages, notes on my counter, people showing up where they shouldn't be. You want to talk, Julius? Talk. He turned. His eyes held more than they used to. Not just attraction. Not even regret. Weight. History. And something else. Fear. I wanted to protect you from what I'm a part of. He spoke with weight in his voice. But I realize now, keeping you in the dark only made you more of a target. She stepped forward, jaw tightening. What does that mean? She asked. Before I say anything, I need you to see this, he said quietly. He walked to the edge of the studio, opened a drawer, pulled out an old envelope, yellowed with time. Inside, a photo. Vixen, brows furrowed, looked at the envelope but didn't reach for it yet. What is it? More riddles? She asked dryly. She took it. 3 men in military regalia, one of them unmistakably Julius's father, and another. Her breath caught. The third man, standing tall, smiling faintly, looked just like her. Then Julius in a soft voice. Charles Vergara. He was a general, strategic advisor to my father during the early transition wars. The two of them built the framework for what was supposed to be a new continental alliance. Vixen was in disbelief. That's not possible. My father died when I was 9 years old. My mother barely talks about him. She sent me off the boarding school in Europe to forget I had a father. By the time I got back, she made sure I had a new father. Imelda's husband, number 3. Because Charles didn't just serve power. He knew too much about how it was stolen. Julius told her. Vixen was now getting way suspicious now. Where did you get this? Why do you have this? It belonged to my father, Julius Tade. Watch her reaction closely. It's part of a larger history. One I think you were never meant to know. She stared down at the photo again. Emotion welled in her chest. But it wasn't sadness. It was confusion. Maybe even fear. Vixen, whispers. Why are you showing me this now? He stepped close. Too close. And in a soft whisper voice, he said, because they're watching you now. And if they ever realize who you really are, and then... A flash flicker in the gallery. Something in the reflection of the glass window behind him. A red dot. Vixen's breath caught in her throat. Her body moved before her mind caught up. Vixen, in an urgent whisper voice, "Don't move," she said. Julius stilled. She took a slow step forward. The red dot hovered on his shoulder, then slid to her chest. "Get down!" And then... crack. Glass shattered. The echo of a high-caliber shot ripped through the studio. Julius tackled her behind a supply table. The photo slipped from her fingers, fluttered to the ground like a ghost from another time. The studio plunged into dim, strobe-like chaos. Paint cans rattled. A canvas fell off its easel. Julius, low, breathless. They're early. Vixen, wide-eyed. What the hell is happening, Julius? He pressed a hand to the ground, listening. Not for footsteps, but for silence. The kind that meant someone was still watching. It wasn't supposed to start tonight, Julius said, barely above a whisper. Start what? She snapped. He looked at her, and that's when she saw it in his face. Guilt. But not because he caused it, because he couldn't stop it. Some truths are interrupted, not because they're untrue, but because someone else knows. You, Vixen, are about to speak them aloud. Thank you for stepping into Vixen's world tonight. And if Vixen's journey tonight made you feel something, if you've ever faced a truth you didn't want to hear, fought for control in a world that wanted to define you, or made a choice that changed everything, then you're already part of a story. Drop a comment below. Would you have walked away from the crown, or stayed and played by someone else's rules? And if you know someone who understands what it means to fight for your own story, share this with them. The real game is only beginning. I'll see you in part 5.